Thank you for taking some time for yourself. You know, it's interesting how many things people already do without ever needing to think about them. Like brushing your teeth or washing your hands or tying your shoes while your attention is somewhere else. Some people notice how their body knows exactly how to walk down a familiar hallway or climb a flight of stairs without counting the steps. And then there are those moments standing in a line, waiting for an elevator, sitting in a car while the road moves underneath you, where nothing in particular needs to be decided. People sometimes notice they've driven a whole route and can't remember every turn, and yet they arrived just fine. Or how warm water moves across the skin in a shower, and thoughts come and go without needing to be followed. Typing common words, folding laundry, listening to a fan, watching rain trace lines on glass. And what's interesting is none of these improve when someone pays closer attention. They simply happen when attention is no longer required. And some people notice that when night comes and the idea of sleep appears, the mind does something very human. It checks, it monitors, it wonders whether things are changing yet. Not because anything is wrong, but because the mind has learned that nighttime is a time to watch carefully. That response can happen so quickly. It feels automatic. And once something is automatic, it doesn't really need correcting. It only needs a different context, which is why it can be useful to think less about this moment and the more about how patterns unfold over time. Because when something repeats often enough, it It stops needing effort, like walking a path you already know, or breathing in a steady rhythm, without ever having to remind yourself. Some people find it curious how doing nothing different at all eventually changes everything, because patterns, when left alone, either dissolve or transform themselves. And if someone were to wonder quietly, without urgency, what happens when they engage a thought at night? They might notice the system stays alert, whereas when nothing needs to be managed, nothing stays awake to manage it. Familiarity tells the nervous system there's no emergency. Predictability tells the brain it can step aside. Repetition teaches the body what comes next. And perhaps this moment is not really about sleeping. Perhaps it's simply about lying down, the way you've done so many times before. Breathing, the way your breathing has always happened. Letting thoughts pass through, the way scenery passes when you're not driving. Perfect. And whether awareness drifts now or later isn't something that needs deciding, because automatic systems don't wait for permission. They take over when nothing else is required. And sleep, like so many familiar things, has a way of arriving when it's no longer being observed. And at some point, not urgently, not consciously, the mind begins to recognize that there are always choices. Not big choices, small ones. Whether to continue engaging a thought or let it pass. And people differ in how they choose. Some notice that continuing only feels right when it brings genuine satisfaction. Others recognize moments where a quiet compromise feels kinder, and sometimes there's a simple compliance, not giving in, just allowing the body to do what it already knows. And what's useful is that none of these require analysis. The body knows the difference between effort and ease, between something that nourishes and something that merely fills time. And that knowing can happen faster than thought. Some people discover they can let feelings remain present without needing to act on them. A feeling can be there, warm, cool, heavy, light. While attention quietly shifts elsewhere, just as you can feel the weight of a blanket without thinking about it, just as background sounds continue when you stop listening, and when feelings are allowed to stay right where they are. They no longer need to signal. Meanwhile, another part of awareness can gently orient towards what comes next. Not forcing an outcome, just allowing direction. Like a compass that doesn't push the traveler, only points. And often, when things are freed from responsibility, they soften on their own. And there is something worth noticing here. Even choosing not to choose is a form of skill. Pausing is a skill. Letting go is a skill. And each time you notice yourself responding deliberately, even without words, that's something the nervous system remembers. Not as praise shouted out loud, but as quiet confirmation. This is familiar. This is safe. This works. And systems repeat what works. That's what's interesting, is that this same process appears in many places, waiting, letting time pass, allowing movement to slow. Moments where nothing needs to be solved. And each time this happens, here or elsewhere, the pattern strengthens. So future nights don't need instruction. They recognize the signal. Familiar posture, familiar stillness, familiar letting go. And the body responds the way it has learned to respond. And now there is nothing left to decide. Thoughts can come or not come. Awareness can drift or fade, because automatic systems have already begun. And sleep, which has never needed help, can arrive in its own kind, in its own quiet way. Perfect. You are perfect just as you are.